Nice sweep there by the Lemacks.
Great job of just exploding his hips through.
Now in top position, trying to get this crucifix position.
He has it. He almost has it.
It's been a common theme here tonight inside the Icon FC cage.
Oh my goodness.
Linder trying to avoid it now. Choke attempt. Lemacks in business.
Oh my goodness.
Linder in huge trouble.
Oh, he's on him. He's on him, TJ.
Trying to peel the hand away is Linder. He taps. It is done. Jake Lemacks puts on a show in front of his hometown crowd. My goodness. Jake Lemacks, that's a fight you're going to remember for a long, long time. Wow. This is a young man to keep your eye on. Jake Lemacks said he was going to put on a show in his pro debut, and he did just that. Again, you want to talk about high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on display inside the mixed martial arts cage. You just saw it.
Rama is a brother of mine who I met a few years ago. A multi-talented individual who is a yoga teacher as well as a musician and many more things. Dedicated to his community, from sustainable living to how I've personally seen him interact and treat children. An inspiration and a lovable man. Both a fighter and a warrior in the ring and out. Please give it up for my brother and my friend, Rama Lemacks. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going, brother?
Good, dude. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Is this your humble abode?
This is my humble abode. Calling it the Wolf Den here right now, but sometimes I want to call it the House of Five Elements. 23 feet of paradise.
Yeah.
So I got my stove set up. Don't have a fire going right now. Trying to conserve firewood for this weekend. We got a lot of chopping to do.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. Gradually getting set up and settled. Still got some things to add in, but that's life. Work in progress. Work in progress.
The beautiful thing is you're not affected by the water situation at all.
No, we're really lucky in that sense, and told some friends if they end up in dire need, come out here because we got really good artesian well water, and we've had water flowing the whole time.
Yeah.
I think a lot of Midlothian is that way, but even some of them are hooked onto big tap water, and it's just nice that we've got a well that also tests that clean too. Try not to take that for granted. Our well is tested better than the Wayside Spring for years.
When this water situation happened, we're like, this is just more reason of why we need to be doing things like that with the natural water sources. Putting our water in the government and people that don't give a shit about us, this is just showing that.
Yeah, I think especially the end part of that is really significant for the world as it is today, is people really have to take into account the facts of who cares and who doesn't. And I agree fully that in lieu of the disasters in Asheville, Flint, Michigan, currently here, a lot of the stuff with the fires, a lot of the stuff in Hawaii, a lot of the things that have happened in Indian country, it's just very clear that the government doesn't really care too much about the wellness of people, the basic needs of people, such as clean water, good food, shelter, and just an abundance of goodness and not so much stress that ends up killing people, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's something that is the silver lining to a lot of these hard times that are happening, is now we have more than ever raising consciousness of the masses, where people are asking those questions is, okay, how can we look out for each other more? I think one of my friends called this happening in Richmond with the water crisis, the 4 days off, which compared to Michigan isn't that crazy, but it's this unprecedented for Richmond. This is like a little pop quiz on how people are going to react, how people can be on the ground for each other, where the solidarity is going to be, where the panic's going to be, and where the clarity is on the lack of good response from local government. The good part about seeing where there is flaws and lack in the system is then we are given the opportunity to create solutions and take more of our power back in doing that for ourselves and with each other.
Absolutely. That's the beautiful thing. The silver lining is that this is what it is showing us. I personally am solution oriented. For me in my life, I've done away, and I'm doing away with victim mentality of things happening to me. Everything that I manifest and has manifested in my life, I look at is like, how is this serving me? What is this doing for me? And how can I show up for my life and other things better? Hence, this podcast it's not strictly masculine, but it's a very divine masculine way of doing things, regardless of gender. This is something we can all do and look in our lives for.
Absolutely. I love the premise, love the idea of it.
I want to know you. I want to know your story. What is your journey growing up? What is your life as a male, as a man, and especially in regards into spirituality? A lot of our sisters don't see a lot of masculines out there doing a lot of this spiritual work, and this is to inspire more of our brothers and also to inspire our sisters as well. I want to learn your story. I want to learn about you, especially as a fighter and what that means to you. I know as a UFC, even in your personal life, in your practice, I want to learn about you and what is your message and what would you like to share?
Hard to know where to start for sure. I'm hearing a lot of focus around the warrior archetype and the journey there and how that relates to spirituality, though. That's a good focus for sure. Is there any specific space that you might like me to start? And then I could get into a flow of consciousness a little bit.
Start with your journey, start with your upbringing, whatever you want to share and be brave with.
Sure. Upbringing was probably better than most, but also a little bit worse than most in a good amount of ways. I came up in a pretty nice suburban house with two younger brothers and grew up going to a Methodist church until I was about 9 years old, with a lot of arguments in the house. Like my mom and dad were fighting a whole lot. They ended up being divorced when I was 16, and both their parents had been divorced. Broken families were a little bit early on in the ancestral curses breaking sort of thing. Working through wounds with family and then therefore families like community. So I was always trying to create friend groups around me in some ways, because especially early on, talking about at the start of the journey in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, I was able to kind of make friends with everybody, but I didn't really fit into any specific space. My reading level was way beyond most kids. My math level was, so it was a couple years accelerated. It wasn't as advanced as my reading level was. I was a big kung fu nerd as a little kid, 4 or 5 years old. I like the kung fu movies more than I like the superhero movies. I was writing a bunch of comic books about these characters that I would come up that were usually based around like martial arts type superheroes. They were almost adaptations of Iron Fist and Deadpool. And even though I played every sport as a kid, none of them really stuck for too long. I was getting into a lot of fights on the playground because spazzy kid, just skinny kid early on. So my mom asked me when I was in the end of kindergarten if I wanted to try out this like winter enrichment karate program. Had a blast with it, then found a traditional Okinawan school that was karate do right by us when I was 7, and then just trained religiously. And from that early age, martial arts was my way to get grounded. It was also an escape in a way. I would say reading was my greatest escape because I love stories. I love the finding inspiration in different archetypes and different stories like that. And I just go train for hours and hours as a 7, 8, 9-year-old at the dojo to get away from the chaos of the world and what had purpose to me from an early age. I definitely didn't really resonate with the church. I kind of like Sunday school a little bit because I like the social aspect of it. I like some of the stories, but at the same time, like the overall doctrine, the overall vibe of the institution really felt wrong to me, even though at an early age, like spirituality called. And then school was just bullshit too. I was like, this isn't a place for smart people. I really would like to take a lot of my education in my own hands, yada, yada, yada. And there's a plethora of happenings from an early age that led me to being like deeply depressed at 9, 10 years old, basically full on atheist. I knew the basics of neurochemistry and would tell my friends and people that tried to like preach love to me or God to me is God's not real. Love is just oxytocin. It's just a chemical meant for us to bond, find loyalty, and preserve the next generation of children. There's nothing beyond that. That was happening from 10 to 13, even though I was still training a bunch and doing a lot of that focus. It was just coming from a technical aspect, even though before that, as a child, I had some exposure to Chinese medicine, some of the mysticism there. Avatar: The Last Airbender was my favorite show as a real young kid, as well as Naruto. Started watching that when I was 6 years old. So there was a big influence from Eastern thought, Eastern philosophy.
A lot of wisdom in there.
Right, this idea of strengthening yourself through harmonizing with the forces of nature, more or less, had always appealed to me from the earliest days that I can remember. And that was definitely something that related to the church and like how people were doing families, housing, fucking communities, schooling. All of it definitely felt wrong to me. And fighting was the place where I got to express myself. I excelled. I felt powerful. A lot of people would acknowledge that, where a lot of what I was saying around schooling, the church, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, people were like, "You're a kid, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about." And I think 13 years old, I started doing a lot of chakra meditations. I was like, okay, let me meditate to focus my mind. It really just came from a desire to be more strategic in the way I was approaching life, a better chess player, a better martial artist, more articulate. I used it to make the brain more efficient. And then lo and behold, the first couple of times, especially when I did the chakra meditations, it was like a full-on explosion DMT-esque trip for me. I was weeping, I was crying. I was like, I couldn't call it God, but I knew that it was undeniable. I called it energy basically until I was 19. I called it energy. Eventually I called it love. Love and energy meant the same thing to me. Chi works, prana works. Yeah. There's a deeper word for all those things that is something divine. I started to really taste that again at 13 and was going to the Unity centers at 14, because even though I had started to feel that, I was feeling again. So I was still going through a whole lot of mental health issues and anxiety and depression through the teens. I think a lot of people do, especially in their preteens, but it has been pretty nonstop for most of my childhood. It's been a struggle for most of my life, dealing with this existential, seeing so much of the world, feeling like I'm aware of a lot of things and tragedies that have happened on this land and across the world, and wanting to influence it positively and heal responsibly. Also, something in the warrior archetype is about like collective responsibility of the human shadow. And a lot of my life, people are like, don't worry about that. That's not yours. Don't put the whole world on your back. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. But at the same time, if we don't embody the warrior archetype and collectively create these solutions and attack the problems, attack the demons within, and then integrate them as we overcome them, they transmute them, they just stay there forever. Like, they don't go away because you fucking ignore them. If anything, it just gets worse and worse and worse.
Neglect.
Cheers to my lady Livy for bringing me some good black coffee.
Cheers.
So the Unity Centers, I was leading meditations as a teenager, and that all really started appealing to me. All the Eastern medicine, I've got that whole side tattooed on this arm. That became the core focus. Then that led me into yoga as a 17-year-old, like Ashtanga yoga, the movement side of yoga rather than just the meditation and the breath work and the philosophy. And same thing there. I just did that to be a more flexible fighter. I thought it would make me a more efficient physical being. And then I felt the spiritual and mental benefits of just my first couple months of Ashtanga yoga as a 17-year-old. I would drive home as the sun was still rising. I'd be laughing and crying for no reason other than it was just being alive was so perfect. I didn't need a reason, and that was the reason that I didn't need a reason. Just the moment was that beautiful. Every moment was that beautiful. Every moment was a moment to be grateful. And then I still would be more powerful than in jiu-jitsu. I was moving so much more fluidly right off the bat. My breath control, my awareness, everything flowed together. And I remember both from friends and even from myself, people are like, how do you reconcile those two parts? Like this big lover, poet, yogi part of you and this fierce, savage warrior part of you that doesn't really mind, that feels alive, like bleeding in battle. And they've always, to me, been just two sides of the same whole. But for a while in my life, and a lot of the journey in my life has been going from saying that, having in my head, to really bringing it down into the heart and body and understanding what it means to have that balance within. The healer and the warrior being in the same is knowing how to destroy, is knowing how to create. Knowing how to create is knowing how to destroy. My partner is studying to be an acupuncturist right now and does a lot of healing, and it's like same thing with the acupuncture. The ability to heal on that level is there's plenty of points where if you were really messing with it, you could just kill somebody with a tiny needle.
Yeah.
So that's been the life journey right there with just going through it. Is still today. I ended up becoming a professional fighter 3 years ago. I was fighting amateur for a long time, competing nationally at the amateur level for most of my childhood and teenage years, early adulthood, finding that living the dream and moving into the challenge of that has been a wild time.
What does it mean to be a fighter for you in all aspects? And even what does it mean to be a warrior in all of its multidimensionality?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say I think of myself mostly as a warrior. Most of my life, I've put fighter, martial artist, and warrior in separate categories. Fighter is like a gladiator, which is still, it's the grit, but it's more somebody who just like really loves to brawl and is a competitor, right? That's the main thing. And so there's a lot to be learned in competition with self, competition with others in healthy ways. And then the martial artist is the lifestyle. That's the everyday, bringing the Zen meditation, the breath control, making yourself a better person through the way, trying to ease the suffering within yourself and ease the suffering in the world around you through your practice, as well as becoming the best expression of yourself, expressing all of yourself a little bit more each day through your practice, a little bit more power, a little bit more patience, a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more presence, all those things. And then a warrior is almost like a paladin, basically, is somebody who is fighting for a divine purpose and has that lifestyle of a martial artist, is willing to engage as a fighter, but ultimately is fusing those together in a way that eventually is for the good of mankind, right?
Mm.
In the way that they understand. A warrior is protecting something. I think that relates to you with you talking about divine masculinity. Is that's been the core of my understanding of divine masculinity, is that protecting energy
Mm.
that creates the solid boundary and a wide expanding boundary for the yin to be. In Chinese medicine is a solid center, but in the yogic teachings it would be that for that protected boundary for Shakti to be expressed, for just the creative feminine side to be able to move. I think that's a big part of it for sure. And you saw that in the samurai and in plenty of the periods of Japan, and you see it resonate now. And that's always been such a big impact on me, is especially the Japanese outlook on life, philosophy on life that I'm still studying, and I want to say I'm an expert on understanding it, but I've always been drawn to it. Is you saw so many samurai write beautiful poetry and make beautiful art and channel that on the premise that um, they could die the next day. That they weren't guaranteed life. They weren't taking life for granted. So it was that much more necessary to take in the beauty and to appreciate that beauty and to try to express the beauty that you could, and really know when to have the sword in its sheath and when to bring the sword out. Because again, that's part of the balance, and that's part of the journey, that's part of the medicine and maturing in that understanding, or at least it has been for me. I've always resonated with Miyamoto Musashi as a teacher, as is like a warrior ancestor. My sensei Jacob Young, who is my main jiu-jitsu sensei I met when I was 14 and has always looked out for me since. I've had plenty of amazing coaches, amazing senseis in different arts and crews in Muay Thai, but that's like my big bro. He also really helped to foster that kind of philosophy within me. Like it was already there as far as readings I had done as a child, early teen. And then as I transitioned into becoming a man, it was like really studying
Mhm.
some of those texts in those ways. And I think the simplest quote from Five Rings that Musashi passes on is the way of the warrior is the resolute acceptance of death. And I think that echoes this philosophy from Tibetan Buddhism that the core of all fears is the fear of death.
Mhm.
And if you can transcend that fear of death, then you truly embrace life. Because if you're scared of death,
Mhm.
you're also afraid of life.
Absolutely.
And so the warrior is the friend within that gives one the opportunity to not be afraid. We can use so much more of our brain and more of our body when we're not limited by fear. And most people is stuck in a state where every bit of their life is set up to address fear in a way that doesn't really,
It's not productive.
it's just comfort. It's addressing fear in the way of creating comfort so fear doesn't have to be dealt with.
Yes.
You know? And most of the statistics show most of the people on their deathbed in this country and in the West, their last couple words are, "Oh shit. Oh fuck. I'm so scared." It's not really, I guess, what most people would think of as a warrior practice, but I've always loved relating the warrior and the healer together, like how they're two ends of the same spectrum. They're more synonyms than opposites, really. Is a lot of the old people in the temples in India, they'll be meditating for hours on it, and they'll just be going, Waheguru, 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 which Wahe is an ancient Sanskrit expression of oh wow, or like, it doesn't really have great English words for it. And then guru is known by most of us as a teacher, but is like going to the light within. Like to guru is invoking that lightness. So want to keep doing that because they want their last words to be, "Oh wow, I'm going to the light," right? Instead of their last words to be, "Oh shit, I'm afraid." So the idea in both a lot of the Tibetan mysticism, if you read the Book of the Living and Dying or the Book of the Dead, and I think that echoes in the ancient samurai bushi mindset, is to live in this sublime harmony so that is not afraid to die, so that when you die, you can go at peace. And the idea for more, I think, the Tibetans is that how you die determines what your next life, that next state is like, where you're going, where you're coming. I think that's less important. That's just like some esoteric jibber jabber thrown in, but I find it all fascinating. So.
What I think is absolutely beautiful with you, Rama, is to me, you really do embody a warrior in multitude of ways. And you even expressed it with your story of how you were meditating and how you were driving home and you had this beautiful aspect and look on life. And I feel sacredness is a huge thing that our brothers are missing, is that reverence and sacredness in life in all of its ways. And you've managed to integrate both sides of masculinity that are needed together. They're complementary. Is that healer, that peaceful, heart-centered lover and protector, as well as that warrior, which is also protecting, killing, and destroying. And I feel that as our sisters rise in the new paradigm, as they're freed and liberated, it requires us to be both, to be the protectors, to be what they need so they can grow and be better. And that is that lover, that is that heart-centered, tapped in, emotional, intelligent male, as well as that fierce warrior. And to be living every day like it could be our last, without being super dramatic, but to embrace life, to know that it is a gift. And every single moment, every day you wake up, breathing in the fresh prana, the air, the life, knowing that it could be your last, and loving and doing everything like it's your last. You fight like it's your last. You fuck like it's your last. You do this stuff because it is a gift, and knowing that it could be taken away from you. But this is all part of the beauty that we are re-embracing.
Well put. Well put.
One of my favorite memes is a brother of mine sent me was, you could be both. It was King Leonidas and a monk. It was just to be this powerful warrior as well as this peaceful healer. You don't have to be one or the other. And I know for me, in the beginning of my spiritual journey, I didn't know of that integration. Every time I saw a brother of mine in a setting of spirituality, it was some aloof monk that was disconnected, or there was a huge turnoff for me. That it felt for me, to me, my lens was seeing men of a monster that needed to be quelled. And it was a huge turnoff. It was like the only way for ascension was through castration. But then after seeing more men that embraced more of their human, their masculine, in a divine way, an expression that balanced and co-created with the other aspects, that was amazing. And that's what I wish for more of my brothers and all, or even sisters, everyone to see and know in all ages. Because I feel like that's what we don't see a lot in society right now, but it's making a comeback.
Yeah, I agree. It's really well put, my bro. Again, I think you touched on a couple important points there. I think the first about the monster, it's true that when masculinity is unexpressed, suppressed, or really the word is immature, then it absolutely expresses itself as a monster in shadow form because the warrior and the aggression has been denied. It's the idea that no matter can be broken down or destroyed. So it has to be integrated and flowed with. That energy in all people is there of aggression, of power, of warrior stuff, of that intense side. So if you haven't engaged with it in yourself and you haven't gone through that journey of engaging with it, overcoming it, and integrating it, and then continue to do that, then you will be overtaken by it. Great Terrence McKenna quote on this line is, and that kind of relates again to the warrior archetype of going into the initiation, coming back with more power, the Tibetan meditation of meditating on the death and overcoming that fear continuously. Is Terrence McKenna said that a shaman is a sick man, woman, or person who has experienced their death before their death and gone into the spirit world to bring back power. And they must continue, and they must continue, and they must continue to shamanize lest they become sick again. So it's not just doing it once. I'm paraphrasing David Goggins in this a little bit. Is like a lot of people, they have the shit happen in their life, or they get to the point of discomfort with their exercise, their meditation, their practice, and then they're relieved when they graduate from it, right? You have to, in order to not quell the monster, but to be able to embody that, but have it really under your control is, again, just practice, 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 practice. And in a state that is taking that power and making it a positive thing. It's just like firebending. So we're going to go back to the Avatar's Last Airbender and stuff. Is that's one of the things that Zhang is telling Aang. One of the things that is shown through Zuko's whole journey is it can be destructive. It can be can be anger. It can be in this immature state, but then it can also be what protects and provides life in this harmonized state when it's coming into the awareness of all the other elements and how it depends on the other elements. So that's a big part of it is, can you embody your power while also recognizing that you as a being depend on just that, the earth, the water, the wind, and other human beings and animals and plants to live every single day. Mm-hmm. And so you have to keep showing up. That's the hardest part is people want to do it the right thing once or twice, or the scary thing once or twice, the hard conversations once or twice, and be like, I got it, it's done, I learned it, the lesson. And that's when you fail right there, is as soon as you're like, I have learned everything I have to learn about this, I'm done, your soul starts dying at that point. But that's also that's the point where the universe comes in immediately there to humble your ass, right? And that's what's so beautiful about jujitsu, especially, I would say, among all the martial arts, is you could be the best of the best of the best. There's always still a bigger fish. There's always still a way to get humbled and to keep that ego in check. If you're denying the fact that you have ego, you're just creating more ego. If you're denying the fact you have rage or grief or whatever energy needs to be processed and expressed, then it's just going to end up growing until it possesses you. And then that comes back to, again, the warrior archetype. Bruce Lee talks so much about martial arts being honestly expressing yourself, right? It's really easy for me to be cocky with you and talk about all the times that I got these awesome wins, or I pulled off this flashy move, or I could show you the videos of these cool flashy movements. But for me to sit here and be authentic, stay authentic with you and with everybody I meet and with myself, and really be in integrity in that, not lying to you or me, is a constant challenge, because you're going to realize through every step how much you have been lied to by the world. and how much you have internalized other people's lies that they've told themselves and passed on to you. And you have to be willing to get to that place that scares you a little bit, right? And then create safety in that. I was just watching a Huberman podcast. For everybody who doesn't know Huberman, he's the best on neuroscience with integrating the warrior archetype and a lot of these positive living things with how that relates to brain chemistry. And he was talking with Goggins about this part of our brain that grows, is very essential to growing your stress threshold and bringing folks up, health up, and it only grows when you get to the suck. If you like hill sprints, it doesn't matter if you do hill sprints until your legs don't work, they're not going to grow. If you like doing handstands for an hour straight, it doesn't matter if you do handstands until you're freaking red in the face and can't breathe because all that's there. It's only when you reach that space of, all right, this sucks one out, and you're able to sit in it a little bit more than you did before, that you actually grow your brain in that way. And that's hard to do. That is hard to do for any human being. You have to be willing to remove the perfectionist of life. You have to be willing to make mistakes, because mistakes and failure is the only way that you're going to gain true knowledge, wisdom, and success. Anybody who's been really successful in an authentic way has fucked up so many more times. That's another favorite quote from the Japanese ideology, is the only difference between a beginner and a master is that the master has failed more times than the beginner is even attempted, right? Yeah. So again, coming back to what you were talking about with the healings of the brothers and sisters, is when I think of community and I think of relationships, especially, always, it's so easy to have a mistake, have a miscommunication, and I don't know, get defeated, get in your head, or create a narrative about somebody, and then you lose that authenticity, because it's easier for people to put themselves and other people in little boxes and categories and then put that away in the filing cabinet so they don't have to deal with that, rather than to be raw and vulnerable and actually present with what is. So being able to breathe and be present in those stressful situations of crazy jiu-jitsu matches, bleeding in front of thousands of people while they're screaming my name and trying to find a way to come back and win, being able to do that there helps so much in life, with doing it in any other work, in any other connection, just being human. But it's only if you train it that way. It's only if you come at it with that intention. It's only if you also ground yourself in that philosophy. You can't just do the physical movements and expect it to do that for you. That can happen with people, with yoga and with martial arts and with meditation and everything. Just spontaneously it clicks. Eventually will for everybody. But if you really want to get there and you really want it to be something that permeates itself into everything that you do and everything that you are, you have to put that intention there from the get-go. You have to train in such a way that you can apply it to all things. That's, again, paraphrasing, almost directly quoting Musashi. I'm going to be doing that a whole lot, like, till I die. So, yeah.
I feel it's a huge divine masculine trait that is that dedication and devotion to the practices, to the teachings, and to all aspects of our lives. And I feel
Definitely
a lack of devotion versus devotion is what makes you a man, because it's real easy to just be like, I don't know, or I'm not this. So many men don't commit to anything. And there are several reasons why. But that's where the bravery comes in. That's where the desire to be and to embody, to express whatever is challenged and to be made.
Absolutely.
I said earlier that I feel one thing that, or a major thing that I feel is missing from a lot of our brothers, is sacredness. Do you have anything about that?
Yeah, that's something that, again, I think really just one can take from any true daily practice. Like, something that I actually took for granted for a lot until I got to my adulthood, is growing up with such an arduous training and competition regimen, and being driven for self-study in so many ways, like with reading so much as a kid. I had a hard time understanding when other adults would have a hard time getting that going for themselves for whatever reason. And it's really tough for a lot of people because they didn't have it. They didn't have that program coming up. And then starting's really tough. But I mean, that's what you got to do. You got to start. And as far as that relating to sacredness, I would say that I think the reason people suffer in the mental health department, especially, is really they're spiritually sick from a lack of clear purpose and a lack of themselves finding true roles in their community that they feel they value and that they feel are really valuable for the people around them, as well as valuable for the ecosystem. Because we're all the living soil, we're all the living water, we're all the living earth itself. We can't deny that. But we live in a way that denies that sometimes. And it's just like a lot of these jobs out here, a lot of the things that drive the matrix don't really support regenerative organic life. It's just made to grow for the sake of growth for this economy rather than the wellness of humanity. And I think people have lost their sense of family for the most sense. And I think family comes before community. Not having those things at the very sense fucks people up at the root chakra level. And if their root chakra is messed up, it's going to be real tricky for any of the other chakras to stay healthier for longer than a couple of seconds. There's always going to be something that gets screwed up with the root. So having just a good foundation of community that shares meals in a good way is a big thing that a lot of people are missing at a fundamental level. That with all our technology and all the food that's available and that you wouldn't think is so big, but yeah, there's a big disconnect from nature. Again, we are the living soil, we are the living water, and your soul and your subconscious knows when you act in denial of that. Like your cells know, your cells that have been the stones, your cells that have been this ocean, your cells that have been some ancient trees that somehow ended up being you, they know. So when people are able to get in places where they can celebrate that in a good way through song and story and fire and feast and just merriment overall, then that comes into the focus that much more. People start to treat themselves and the earth better. But the problem is with, again, a lot of the Western world, a lot of the modern world, is most of the places where people are being festive is also heavily laden with consumption and intoxication, and usually aren't spaces that are really geared towards people being real with each other. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love going to concerts, bro. Definitely do. But as I've gotten older, I've gotten less and less because there's so many drug fueled places like
It's all
and
there is for,
different.
like you're saying, these spaces. That's all they're for. There's no expansion spaces,
Yeah, I mean the average.
authenticity spaces.
Yeah, 100%. The average person is working a 9 to 5, and then they go to the bar on Friday, Saturday, and they chill on Sunday, or maybe they go to church and they have some people they like, but it's rare for people to have a big sense of community around them. So I'm grateful for that too. Just as much of a long-term vision as I have, I also try to not take that for granted. How many amazing people are around in these various Richmond communities that support each other in the good ways. And it's like the simple things. There's so many people, again, like watching these podcasts with some of these other amazing athletes and inspirational people with like Huberman and Goggins and some of these fighters that I've been drawn to. Like Tyson Fury has a great story. I also love that he's an Irish gypsy, but he really went through depression and came through it to get the heavyweight title back. Shoot, they all talk about a lot of the richest people that they're friends with, the people that have everything come to them and are just like, something's missing. I don't know why. I got 5 of the nicest car in the world and 2 of the nicest houses and the supermodel wife. I don't know why. And a lot of that is, there's 2 things. One is there's 75% of you, there's 80% of you that's still stuck in you. Like you're not actually, you're doing all these things, but you're not expressed. You're not brave enough to show yourself and who you are. I think that's a huge part of it, is figuring out who you are, expressing yourself, asking yourself those hard questions. And the more you do that, the second part of it is you actually start to give yourself by understanding yourself, the opportunity to connect to people in a different way. They can't connect to a mask, right? They can't connect to a false idol. It's got to be a real face. So I think it's a lot of that in the archetype sense. And then again, people want to layer on. They think the more they have, the better it's going to get, when a lot of times it's the most simple, basic things that make it's a sunrise, it's a sunset, it's a full moon, it's watching the perfect flow of water along the river, it's sitting around a fire, sipping coffee and having a smoke, and somebody's
With
telling
your
them,
partner, you know.
sit there. Yeah, it's those things, man. It's those things. No matter how much money you have, no matter who you are, no matter what class you are, they've got so many studies on fire alone. I could talk for ages. Like
I could
one
do a
thing
whole
too, like
masculine podcast about it, just in the masculine sect of just watching fire and what it does for just to be a male, let alone a human. Yeah, that's a whole.
yeah, 100%. Just especially as far as the human side of it, it's just people want to talk about red light therapy, like a whole new age thing that came up with. That comes from fire.
Yeah.
As is like the red light is because we sat around fire. They have it in India. People will just come gather around all these funeral pyres and funeral fires they'll have on the beaches, and it's just studied. It's like as soon as the fire lights, people just walk over to it. Same thing happens on any of the beaches they're doing drum circles on. I celebrate like some of the ancient holidays of my ancestors. I think having connection to your ancestors, and then again a lot of the native elders that I've gotten to sit with and learn from have all stressed how important it is to think 7 generations forward. We've seen that a lot of the oligarchs, the richest of the rich, they're not, and people in general don't seem to be stressing that so much. Is like, how are we setting up the planet and the infrastructure of how we relate to each other as humans with more love, more positive interaction, positive competition, less war, less slavery, less freaking addiction and homelessness. We don't need any of these problems anymore, right? So it's like, how do we get from point A to point B? Because we have all the solutions here, we just don't have the meta here. And when people aren't a bridge between the past and the future, that is especially with protecting the earth, protecting the water, protecting the future generations, that can all go back to what we're talking in this podcast specifically with divine masculine archetypes, is again, your soul knows that.
Yeah.
Even if you deny that you have a soul, even if you deny that that's the thing, your soul knows it. And it's like, bro, like, why aren't you honoring your ancestors? They made their sacrifices so that you could be the best yet.
Yeah.
And you should make every sacrifice that you can to challenge your great-grandson, great-great-granddaughter, 7 generations. I don't think that's the right one. The right amount of greats, you know? I think I might be a great short. But to be 7 times better than you. That should be the idea, in the way of the kindest, the strongest, the most abundant. That if we're all like that with our bloodlines and with our communities, then where humanity could be in 3 generations, let alone 7 generations, and it is unfathomable for most people. The paradise that we are capable of creating within our own human biome and within our own local ecosystem, multiplied
Even in
upon
this lifetime
everybody else.
too.
Right. Even in this lifetime, we could see so much, and it's just a shift in consciousness. It's just a shift in consciousness. It's just a shift in how resources are distributed and shared, and creating systems that support those things. We don't really have to focus too much on destroying the old.
Yeah.
That might be a good place. That's a whole different thing. We have to confront the old by really focusing on pouring all our energy, all our love, all our strength into the new solutions. Going back to the start of this podcast, we're talking about the water crisis. If disasters are coming up, how are we going to actually look out for each other in disasters? If hard times are coming up, if we're going to deal with any long-term food, water shortages, especially the food shortage and the supply chain breaking down, has been a concern of mine for years and years. Like putting that energy into the solutions of homesteading and the solutions of having more sites that have springs on them, wells on them, so that people can be looked out for.
Yeah.
If we can't depend on these systems to look out for us, we have to create it. We can't sit around and look for somebody else to do it for us. Right?
We've done that before. That's only gotten us in trouble.
Right. We have to take collective responsibility. We have to bring the power into our own hands without hoarding power, without hoarding resources. Going back to the whole thing with sacredness and the simple life, balancing out the warrior healer, is you really don't need so much. If people were rooted in that, on understanding just how good the essentials are, and if everybody's essentials were taken care of in a good way, there would be enough extra for everybody to get taken care of. I'm not preaching communism. I don't believe in communism. I don't necessarily believe in socialism either. I don't have a word for exactly
You don't
like
have
this
to put it in a
system.
box,
I
like you
believe,
said.
yeah. Like I have a non-dogmatic set of principles that I've created that I'd love to share at a different point, talking about like Asave stuff later on. But that's the thing is all these problems have to be addressed. And again, what I talked about earlier in the podcast, you just have to keep showing up. We got to be willing to see the best in each other while still having good boundaries, still having good ways to build trust in a way that works for everybody, all these things. But there have to be these conversations. There has to be action like on the ground. And there has to be a lot of self-work on integrating the shadow and getting aligned with purpose. And you should doing that Uncle Iroh stuff is asking yourself those hard questions. Who are you and what do you want? You know, I think so many people are so distracted with paying rent and just surviving every day that how much have they sat with that? And then a lot of people who've sat with that who they are and what they want, they've heard it, but then they've gotten stuck in these limiting beliefs that can't be them and that they don't deserve that for whatever reason, but they don't even maybe realize that they're holding that belief that this is what they want, but it can't be. And the only difference between any person right now who's struggling in that sense where they don't even know or they do know and they're scared is, and the people who are doing it, who are something, who have gotten there, I still feel like I'm getting there every day, is just showing up and getting through the suck, getting through the scary shit and keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. Because the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be. The longer you wait, the more that voice in the back of your head that's telling you how much of a coward you're being for not facing your dream, for not being your dream. Are you going to run forever? You're going to run forever? What are you going to do? How are you going to run? You're going to hide yourself in this addiction and this story, that story? What you going to do? So with all of that, the truth is the most sacred thing. So being the true version of you, living your true purpose and living your true dream is the only way. And that can look like whatever you need it to be because it's your dream. It's your truth, right? But you got to sit with it. You got to know what that is and you got to not be afraid to express it more and more every day. And you got to express it more than you're expressing what the Matrix wants you to express or what your parents want you to express or what your partner wants you to express. Because if you're not being yourself because how somebody else wants you to be, you're not even giving them the chance to love you authentically. You're creating that barrier of inauthenticity. So being strong and being powerful helps you in being vulnerable. Is a paradox. My partner says it in her yoga classes a lot with back bends, but it's a great metaphor is when you're doing back bends, the stronger the back muscles feel and engage, the more willing the front body, the heart space is to open up. That's it right there. You got to have a real strong back to open up your heart. And the stronger your back is, the more your heart's going to be able to open.
Yeah. I feel that they actually complement each other. Is to be vulnerable, is to be strong.
Yeah.
What I love what you were saying about sacredness is that it is this connection to our family, not just our relatives, but like our soul family, a community, a tribe. And there's a going back to basics with so many things, like the fire. This is what early man, what we evolved, and it's a lot of times the best medicine. So many things that be will have us want to chase the cars, the status, the jobs, the white picket fence. And then we wonder why that in the pursuit, in the absence, or even the having of these things, there's still something that's not there. It's because we're missing that connection, that sacredness to ourselves, like you were also saying. It doesn't have to be this easy thing. The challenge is what sharpens, but it makes the fruit worthwhile. This sacred connection to our brothers and sisters and our mother earth and her inhabitants around us. I would even further that with the connection. The sacredness is also the connection to God, goddess, source, the divine, the unseen things. I heard one of my sisters say, and this really stuck with me, and she said that a lot of men don't think of themselves as sacred. We
Hmm.
can think of like our sisters, like the woman, the oracle, and the mother, a very sacred thing, but you don't think of men being sacred. And I feel I wish, and I don't know if you're the same, Rama, I wish I was taught that I was sacred, that how I express myself is a sacred thing. And going back to our connection with family, with earth, with the things below, like you're saying, that root chakra, as well as the connection to with our crown, the things above, that also helps with our heart center too. As above, so below, as within, as without. That's where the wholeness of sacredness is remembered.
Yes, sir. I think it's definitely upbringing dependent for sure, because like you got so many hardcore religious sectors of people growing up where men are the only thing that's sacred and women are property, or especially in a lot of the hardcore Christian stuff, you've got Eve causing first sin, so women have been demonized since. And then I guess in a lot of the yoga spheres or more new age spheres in the new wave of thought, I would agree that there has been effort to rebalance in maybe some wild ways of the divine feminine being more recognized and explored in different paths and different things like that, where the masculine has just been straight up told it's toxic and it's bad and shouldn't be.
I was referring to true sacredness, not the sacredness that we have been taught from dogmatic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I was musing over it and arguing that I think it lacks on both sides. You know what I mean? I would say it was only in recent decades with a lot of yogic thought and other waves that the ladies got the props they deserve, but also some of that came with just the ladies getting the props they deserve. Some of that did genuinely come with like just man hating. And I think a lot of men have internalized that for sure. And that has sent them through some loops where, again, they don't value themselves because there's not that value being reflected from the outside. I definitely think that should be more of people's upbringing and education, regardless of religion, is the fact that life is sacred and these energies are sacred, people are sacred, hard work is sacred, nurturing is sacred, all of these things.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I feel that our sisters were able to expand into this new era of sacredness because what you said about religion, the men were more comfortable in power and weren't seeking a void or a need to expand elsewhere.
Can you clarify?
Like the Matrix would have you, a lot of the patriarchy, a lot of our fathers, they're in a society and a world that serves them very much so, and less our sisters because they were commodity. They were
Right.
they were seen as sinful, like Eve. They were seeking freedom and liberation, so they were able to go elsewhere and expand. Whereas a lot of our fathers were very content at being where they were because they didn't see it as anything that needed to change, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it goes back to ever since really colonization has happened on Turtle Island. And I would say most of colonized society, in my lens and perspective, lacks community roles. That breaks down so much hierarchy and really does bring in and focus more balance. And that's something that I feel I was really exposed to. Again, being around some of these friends in different tribes, learned a lot from the Abenaki people, and like the clan mothers mostly ran stuff there, seemed to work for them, but they also had a balance. You know, they had masculine spiritual leaders and feminine spiritual leaders. They had the hunters and healers. They had places for everybody to interact, help each other, and be one in that. I think that's a big part of it is when people don't have a role in the community. That was the problem in the nuclear home, is the man's only role was to work for just his family. The woman's
Yeah,
only role was to serve the husband and listen regardless whether she really loved him or she hated him or not. And that was predominantly the last couple hundred years, the last 100 years. But you saw a lot more balance in pre-colonized societies with the indigenous people here. You had more women's rights and balance in Scandinavia in 1100 AD than you did in most of Europe and the United States in the 1900s. You know what I'm saying?
absolutely.
It's really cultural dependent, I think. And everybody having a role and feeding into the center that is the community versus being like broken up into individual families so much, I think is really crucial part of it.
That's part of the separateness that I see in society on the micro and the macro is that just gridded out mine versus yours, where you do have a role to play in your family, in your community, immediately and at large. And you were saying that earlier as the warrior doesn't ignore the shadows of the world and takes that upon him because we are all one.
For sure. The denial of the shadows just makes them stronger.
What wisdom or information would you offer our brothers? And that's in spirituality and universally. What sort of information would you offer to them?
You need a daily routine. Like have your cheat days, you can have your times, especially in between hard seasons. You can have some downtimes for after you've been working for a long time, but it's really necessary to be doing the best you can to take care of the physical form. If you want your mind and your spirit to follow and to get aligned with where you want to be, you can read about it all day. You can think about it all day. You could listen to me talk about it all day. You could talk to your friends about it all day. You could write every to-do list and every goal out that you're going to do. But it's like really just figuring out the way to just attack it a little bit more. Every day is the way to go. Get started now. The daily exercise is for everybody, I would say, for men and women both, but like men exercise more. That's definitely a thing with the metabolism is if you want everything to fall into place, making that first couple hours of your day, your hours for study, exercise, meditation, and all of that is going to set the tone for the whole rest of the day. Your main work, your main focus time might be in the afternoon or evening still, but giving yourself that kickstarter right as you're getting up and having a little bit of a flow there. Whenever I am in fight camp or just training every day at 10 a.m., sometimes it can be arduous. And sometimes I'm doing an extra training session before that, but the tone it sets, the amount of dopamine that my brain's getting from going through that discomfort early in the morning, but also just getting focused because dopamine isn't actually the pleasure chemical, it's the productivity chemical. So daily consistency, it doesn't need to be a whole lot, but it needs to be very, very consistent until it's hardwired in. Like especially at the beginning, you have to be really strict. And then once you get to a level where you've been doing it for years and years and years, you can bend the rules a little bit as you need to, when you need to, depending on what's going on in life. But doing 6 days a week of whatever your practice is, your physical practice, and then pairing that with some reading and some mental or meditation practice, maybe both as well, is like super crucial. I would personally encourage any able-bodied man to pick up a martial art, boxing, Muay Thai. There aren't a lot of good Karate Do schools in America anymore, but you can find them. Jiu-Jitsu, number one, probably right now. Like as long as they got the right culture, if you find the right MMA gym, even if you're not ever thinking about competing in your life and you don't want to go that deep into facing fear that way, you don't have to, but just getting your power level up. The more that you're taking care of your body and then being inspired, when you feel those workouts and you push yourself and you get to a point where you feel like shit, that feeling like shit is going, the more often you're feeling like shit there, that feeling is going to tell you every other thing that you're doing wrong. Is going to be like, yo, you're eating this nasty shit, stop that. Oh, you're smoking this too much, stop that. Oh, you're drinking this, you're thinking this too much, da 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 da, stop that. It's going to naturally make you have a better diet. It's naturally going to get your sleep schedule right. That's another thing. Like anytime I'm being about my sleep schedule, it's so much easier to get into a mental funk. So having your daily, not just your morning routine, your daily routine, more locked in and consistent. But if you're really struggling with the mental health side of things or the focus side of things, you've got to really hardcore parent yourself back into having a normal circadian rhythm so that all your cell clocks in your body are working on the same time. Again, you can bend the rules a little bit once you've been doing it 5-10 years, but you got to start now. And at the start, you want to be as hardcore as you can with yourself. And then on day 6, which could be Sunday or Saturday, do whatever you want. whatever you want, treat yourself. And that dopamine hit too from that cheat day is going to be so big once you get as you're getting yourself through those 6 days of being really conscious of what you're putting in your body and getting to the gym every single day. You're not going to see results in the first day or the second day. And you might tell yourself, oh, this is tough. It's not going to work. But if you stick with it for 100 days, you're a brand new person. Right. And not just being a brand new person once, but being like, oh, okay, now let me figure out how to integrate that into a lifestyle. Let me do the right thing consistently. Right. Make it a practice and figure out what works. It might be biking. It might be yoga. It might be swimming. It might be tennis. It might be martial arts. But whatever it is, figure out something that you can do every day that is going to get your body and your heart working, and then read some shit. If you do that, you're doing better than 95% of the people. It is the easiest it ever has been on this planet to be great, to be successful, to be whatever, because all you got to do is work hard, not quit, and show up. That's all it is. Get started. And like you said with the devotion, if you're really devoted, and it's because you really believe, right? So you got to put your faith there. You got to put your belief there. And you're only going to get that belief and faith through action. Is not generating the thought, is you acting on that faith is what's going to multiply that faith and belief and give you more of it so that you can stay consistent, right? If you do it once, twice a week, and then you miss a week, and then you do it 3 times the week after that, and then you do it once a week after that, like you're never actually going to build real change in your life. If you want to create real change in your life, you just got to fucking do it. You got to stop making excuses. You got to stop prioritizing the things that really aren't that important. You got to stop worrying about seeing every little friend that you think you need to see that's doing so much for your life that, you know, really ain't around in the hard times, and start to be there for yourself in a big way. If you want to get stronger, just get stronger as soon as you freaking can. And don't be afraid to ask others for help. That's the bravest thing you can do when you're on the journey of self-improvement, is ask for help, because there's so many people who are ready to give you that. Believe that you are worthy of getting better. That's the other thing, is like to get over the, oh, this is so tough, the victim mentality. You have to believe that every little bit of suffering is actually getting you somewhere. Even if you can't see it, it's getting you somewhere, and you have to believe that you deserve it. You have to believe that you deserve it, because the further into it you go, that fear of death and that fear of life comes back up and will tell you that you're not worthy.
Yeah.
You're not worthy of happiness. You're not worthy of abundance. You're not worthy of your own power. You're not worthy of love from inside or outside. Whatever. You have to believe that you are worthy of the best version of yourself you're deserving. And that's what you're sacrificing with your sweat, with your time, with your energy is 100% going to get you there, because that's the law of the fucking universe. That is how it works. There's endless evidence now of different people who have made it work for them. And all they do is they just say it, they get real focused on what they want, they put it out in the universe, they speak it, and then they don't give up on it, and eventually it fucking happens.
Yeah. It's fucking awesome what you just said.
Thank you.
So the final question is, for our sisters out there who haven't really seen a lot of sacredness in our brothers, it exists, but it can seem to be so few and far between. Do you have any message for them?
Yeah, I think it's really big to speak for men as a whole to women as a whole, just because so many people have different experiences and different backgrounds, and to two spirits too, because there is the reality of two spirits on this planet now becoming just more of a thing. Like, all people deserve acceptance. Like, even if people don't understand each other all the time, people deserve acceptance. And I think the big thing, and the slight violence that people perpetuating on each other, from man to woman, from woman to man, from woman to woman, from man to man, from two spirit, etc., from person to person, regardless, is telling each other what that should be. Like creating the box, be like, fit into this box. You're not a good man if you don't fit into my box. You're not a good woman if you don't fit into my box. You're not a good person if you don't fit into this box. And so I think you got to find that evidence to, how do I put this? With the sacred sons and with different groups, of men and women getting together. I think more and more we have to find ways to trust men to teach men and to heal with men, for women to heal with women, and for two spirits to heal with two spirits, and then for those groups to be, and the children to also gather as children. And then for those groups to be able to get together and really hear each other and respect what the other person is saying and where the other people are coming from, without vying so much for this control in telling each other what they should or shouldn't be, how they should or shouldn't be. I think that's why people are so confused right now at times with what is divine feminine, what's divine masculine. Like people flip-flopping each, like a lot of men having more feminine energy, a lot of women having more masculine energy, a lot of people being at spaces in between, is because of these subconscious ideas of what a man should be, what a woman should be, is like people not fitting in these and they get all confused. There's an element of trusting the universe and the work to transpire as far as collective healing and collective alignment. But we do see that. We see these groups popping up. I really love what Sacred Sons are doing as far as really big events for masculine healing that's both empowering and really about getting raw. And I see other people doing this with women's retreats in different ways too. So I'm hoping that all that healing can help everybody get more in touch with what masculinity and femininity means for them. That's still in alignment with universal principles, but isn't just going along with somebody else's dogma or doctrine. And I think the end of the day, what the women do need to see is men learning to be more present and transparent, honest with themselves and honest with their sisters, their partners, their mothers about everything, and being willing to freaking do the hard work. A big thing is communicating around value. I think women just want to know that their care is truly valued, and men want to know that their hard work is valued. It's definitely a time for men to start being real men, I would say. That can look like a lot of different things. That can be expressed in a lot of different ways. There's no set box for what a man is supposed to look like. But being in that energy of grounded presence, like developing more stoicism, like stoicism is the way, really, being able to be vulnerable and authentic, but also strong in those times of stress and turmoil, while having that inner feminine, nurturing that inner feminine that is forgiving, that it does have grace for yourself. That's how you're going to be able to receive and to not take for granted, to really be grateful for when that feminine energy is presented from partners, sisters, mothers, grandmothers, like recognizing how valuable that is for the masculine archetype, because there won't be perfection. Yeah, bro, it's a tough one, but I definitely think that the inner power needs to be nurtured, expressed on both sides. And we're in a wild time of shifting paradigms and shifting perspectives. And I think we're gonna see at the end of it an entire new approach to how humans do tribe, and to a whole another level of consciousness, to how people are doing family, to how people are doing brotherhood and sisterhood. And it really comes down to being willing to talk about it, to coming together, to having our women's circles, our men's circles that are both huge gatherings, but also the regular goes, and that's popping up. We're doing it. We're having those talks. There are these pockets now where there are these constant growth containers for people to have a lot of deep philosophical conversation with each other, spiritual practice, but also have those moments where there's friction, there's static, there's misunderstanding, and then to get through that. It all comes down to, again, showing up and being willing to be authentic and to speak the things that we're afraid to speak about, all those levels. So I think there's a deep commitment to that is happening now. I think there's a deep collective anguish for that misalignment and disconnect that has been like shared in humanity. Like some people are just going to go deeper into that ignorance, but what I have witnessed in my life and around me, and what I'm manifesting around is those conversations happening, those ceremonies happening, there being space to witness not just the conversations, different feminine initiations, different masculine initiations, eventually the initiations for the two spirits, for people to be integrated and celebrated and given their roles, right? So it's all a work in progress right now. Nobody really knows what the fuck they're doing. Like at all. Like, you know what I mean? Like people got a sense, people are aligned, but like everybody is figuring it out. And you have to have grace for that, because so many people will be like, even in arbitrary stuff, it's like, oh, well, you believe this last year, you believe this 3 years ago. Is you have to give people the space and grace to change and to grow. And there's definitely the rare occasion where somebody is so sick and has caused so much damage, the world might be better off without him. They might be better just passing on. But overall, it goes back to the prison systems too. Is our prison systems is so much more focused on punishing criminals rather than getting justice and healing for families and for victims. And I think you see that reflected in relationships and in our own subconsciousness. I personally am guilty for punishing myself for my mistakes more than bringing these parts of myself into a space in that internal landscape where they can have a conversation and become more unified. And I've learned that. I've gotten better at that, but I had to fucking really be shown my shadow side through getting triggered as fuck from different life experiences to be up against that. I had to have those mistakes and those shadows really thrown in my face, you know.
Beautifully said, brother. I love everything you were saying. I couldn't agree more. So, yes, thank you so much, Rama, my brother, for being on here, for all of your wisdom, for everything you shared, for all of us watching. Thank you so much, my brother. It's a pleasure to have you on here, man. And thank you all for listening and being a part of this. MC Warrior the Light out. If this episode and series resonates with you, and you're interested in delving more into men's work, I will be creating an online men's group program coming up here very soon. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me via email that I'll flash here on the screen now and link below. I would love to talk to you if you had any questions, meet you, and learn more about you and what you would like from your healing experience and journey as a man who is awakening to his fullest and greatest potential. And to connect with other brothers who are like-hearted. And if you would like to work one-on-one with me, I offer distance energy healing sessions over Zoom, and you can reach out to me via email to inquire about those as well. And for all my other content, you can check out here on YouTube. For my other podcasts interviewing other healers and their gifts and medicine that they could offer you, to series about what I envision and I feel New Earth and the New World could be like through a few short stories and chapters, to discussing with other spiritual and new thought leaders about what is going on and how we can address, see, and live our best lives here and now. Thank you so much. Have a great day.